Hi, and welcome to One Simple Recipe, where we are hoping to get you one step closer to better health. I'm Judy Matusky. I'm a registered dietitian, as well as a culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition, and today we are making Irish brown soda bread. So we're just a little bit ahead of St. Patty's Day, but I love this bread, and I love making it all year round because you can have warm, fresh bread from the oven any night of the week. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a few things laid out. We'll just walk through them. This couldn't be easier. So let me just show you what we're going to do. First things first, we are going to weigh our flour. I think I have really learned and have switched over to weighing all of my dry ingredients, or at least my flours when I'm baking, because I just find that to be foolproof. So if you ever have any issues with things maybe not working out real well when you're baking, I highly suggest just getting yourself a scale and just do measurements. I mean, do weights rather than using measuring cups when you're measuring and weighing flour. All right, so this is a combination of whole wheat and white flour. It's a little bit too heavy with 100% whole wheat. This recipe I got from Cooks Illustrated, who they really worked on refining this rustic whole grain Irish soda bread that is pretty traditional, but they couldn't, get the really good wholemeal flour that's typically used in Ireland, so that they were using the whole wheat flours that we can get here in the States. So we'll talk about how that kind of came together. But anyway, so I'm just going to set my scale to ounces. I'm going to use a clear glass bowl so that you guys can see. Let me clear this out. So now we're gonna start with about 11 ounces of just 100% whole wheat flour, which I think is about 2 cups. But again, if you can measure, that's the way to go. It just makes such a difference. So I might have just about 11 ounces in here. Yeah, pretty close. All right. Just been a little over. All right, so we have 11 ounces of the whole wheat flour, and now we just need 5 ounces of all-purpose flour. And this just lightens it up a little bit. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I want to do 5 ounces, so let's just add that. That's 16. So I want to get this to 16 ounces. A little quick math, right? Just throw this in. Great. 16 ounces. Total, so we have 11 ounces of the whole wheat flour and 5 ounces of all-purpose flour. Then that's about all I need. I don't really need to weigh the other ingredients, but I think for flour, because I keep my flour in my freezer, and it really does change the weight. It changed the volume, so it changes the volume. So when you're measuring 1 cup, it could weigh very differently if you're taking it out of your pantry versus out of the freezer. So, and I always keep whole wheat flour in the freezer. Keep all your whole grains in the freezer, especially flours, because they can oxidize and then they can become rancid, and they won't last as long. I think you can keep whole wheat flour in your freezer for at least up to probably a year. All right, have that in. Now we're going to make this rustic bread even more rustic by adding a couple of additional ingredients to this. So the whole wheat flour is fantastic, but we want even more of a whole grainness to this, to the texture of this bread. And not only is it going to change the texture in a great way, but it also brings more nutrients, which is really, really fabulous. So this is 1 cup of wheat bran that you can buy in. You can buy it in supermarkets. I usually see it in with the cereal aisle in my supermarkets. I buy mine in bulk. So we have a mom's market here, and I buy a lot of my grains and beans and things from them. So I buy it in bulk, and I just have it, pretty much all around. I make a lot of bran muffins, and it's perfect for this. So it's 1 cup of the bran, of wheat bran. And now we're going to use 1/4 cup of wheat germ. And that kind of, again, brings more rustic texture to this bread. And the extra bran and the wheat germ adds, lots more B vitamins and more fiber. So we're bringing a nice nutritional, boost as well. So we're going to use 1/4 cup of the wheat germ. Now, if you buy this, it's the Kirchner brand, I believe, it's usually in a glass jar in the cereal aisle in most supermarkets. That's the wheat germ you'll probably see more typically. This is Bob's Red Mill, another great source. But the wheat bran and the wheat germ, you know, you're going to buy them, then you're going to have probably extra. So just use them in muffins and pancakes and cookies and whatever else you want to. Whatever else you can, you know, add them to, because they'll just enrich and increase the nutritional value of whatever you're baking. All right, so we have all of that. Now, excuse me, we're going to add baking powder, salt, a little bit of sugar, and, excuse me, baking soda. I have a cough. I apologize. I'm trying to get through this. I have really been struggling with some colds recently. And I was debating whether or not even to come on live, but I thought I'm going to give it my go. Have some water here off to the side. I'm going to see if I can get through. If not, I just might have to jump off. So I apologize in advance if I do. All right, so now we're just going to mix all of these ingredients around. I think I'm breathing in the flour. All right, excuse me. So give that a stir, and I'll put the recipe up so you'll have it. All right, I'm going to minimize my talking. All right, and then, excuse me, a little sip. All right, and then the wet ingredient is buttermilk. So 2 cups of buttermilk just go straight in. All right, and then that is it. It is so easy, so few ingredients, but a fabulous rustic, craggly, crunchy, lovely bread that takes, it's about 375 degree oven. I have my oven on. And what does it take? Excuse me. I forget exactly how long it takes to bake, but not real long. I think it's like 40 minutes. I'll have to double check my recipe, but obviously I'm not going to have time for that. So you can see that it's pretty, you know, call it craggly. It's not a smooth loaf by any means, but nor do we want it that way. Sometimes I might add a little bit more buttermilk if I want it to be a little bit stickier. I am not going to for this because I think this is fine. It doesn't have to be, it can be a little bit, you don't really want it real wet. You don't want it super sticky. So this looks pretty good. Now, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but all right, let's get this together. And so you're just basically just bringing it all together. I just have a spatula here that I'm using. All right, that looks good. So it is a little bit sticky, but not too bad. And then we're just gonna turn it out onto the counter. The counter, you don't have to use flour. I might just put a little bit down just to make it easier so I can get it up. All right, and so what's different about this recipe is that, let me just pull this out. What's different about this recipe is that typically, at least whenever I made Irish soda bread before, typically it's usually baked on a baking sheet, like with parchment lined baking sheet, where this recipe, they have you, so you kind of make it into a 6-inch round, flatten it a little bit. That's pretty good. Let me just wash my hands. They have you bake, they suggested baking it in an 8-inch cake pan. And they're mostly just to kind of hold the bread together. And then it allows the bread to rise a little bit and doesn't spread out and get so flat. Because a lot of times when I do it on a baking sheet, it does tend to spread out and it does get a little bit flatter. This gives you a little bit more of a rise to it. And obviously the combination of the baking powder and the baking soda are helping with the rise. Typically, I think traditionally it's more just baking soda, which is hence the soda bread, as the leavening agent, and it also brings like a minerally kind of flavor to the bread. But Cooks Illustrated, when they did it, they suggested adding baking powder because it actually gives it a little bit more of a rise, more so than even the baking powder. So I'm doing both. All right, so I'm just going to use a little bench scraper. And then I have my just lightly sprayed 8-inch cake pan. Oh, I'll do it after. Before you put it in, it's probably easiest to do the cuts on top with just a serrated knife. And you're just going to cut maybe, I don't know, 1/2 inch to 1 inch just across the top. So you have four quadrants here. That just allows it to bake a little bit better and gets really nice and crusty. All right, and that's it. That's it. Honestly, it's so fast. It just, now takes, like I said, I think it's around 40 minutes, but you want to check it. They suggested using an oven thermometer, and it's about 185 degrees to check the middle, because it is hard to tell when you're using whole grain flours. It's hard to tell by the color if they're done. So you may want to do that. I'm just going to throw it in. I'm going to set my timer to 40. I'll double check the recipe. For some reason I didn't write that down on my paper, but I think it's about that. But you'll just kind of double check it. And then I would say halfway through baking, I would just turn it around, turn it a little bit in the oven, so that it just, cooks and browns more evenly. It does get pretty brown. I have one that I did earlier, obviously, because I wanted to show you. So here's the one that I made earlier. Does get nice and brown. Excuse me. I added raisins to this one because I knew I was going to have two. So you can, I think again, Irish soda bread often will have currants or raisins added to it. It might even be a little bit sweeter. I tend to not do that because I sort of like this bread more as a savory bread. But I thought since I was going to have 2 loaves, I might as well do one with raisins. So I just added about a cup of raisins to this. So I was just going to slice it for you. I mean, it's a nice, dense bread. And then I love it toasted. That's the way I usually have it. I usually cut it in slices. And then I will pop it in the toaster. Obviously, it's probably traditionally with really good Irish butter. I may or may not. But there's the cut piece. It has a really nice, beautiful texture to it. Not dry, but just, I think just a super nice whole grain crusty texture, which I love when it comes to having a good bread. And I love this just with stews and soups and salads. I'm going to have this toasted with my salad at lunch today. So there you have it. There is the Irish brown soda bread or whole grain soda bread. Since I'll have 2, we'll probably eat this one today and tomorrow, but then if I don't, it freezes really well. So the one that's in the oven, I am definitely going to just, once I get it out, put it on a cooling rack, and I'm going to let it cool and then wrap it, then I'll pop it in the freezer. All right. Stay well till next week. I'm going to end, not going to talk very much. Be back next week with the sushi bake. I think I said I was going to do that this week. That's actually next week. And it is going to be a whole lot of fun. So stay well, and hopefully by then I will be over all of this and be able to be back on and not jumping off camera in case I start coughing. All right, stay well, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.